Hi, I'm Lisa Hubbard, and welcome to the Heroes Economy Show, the place where changemakers and socially conscious entrepreneurs come to connect, make an impact, and get even more inspired to make a difference. Thanks for joining us. Are you on the path to creating a business that makes a real difference and a lifestyle that allows you to flourish? Well, today I'm really excited that we're going to be sharing the keys to building a conscious business. I'm thrilled to introduce Jeff Klein. He's the CEO of Working for Good, where he activates, produces, and facilitates mission-based stakeholder engagement marketing campaigns and conscious culture development programs. Jeff also serves as the Director of Marketing and Business Development for Conscious Capitalism Incorporated and as the producer of Conscious Capitalism events. He's authored the award-winning book, Working for Good, Making a Difference While Making a Living, and he recently released the book, It's Just Good Business, The Emergence of Conscious Capitalism and the Practice of Working for Good. Jeff loves surfing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, chi running, and moving in general, and he's an actively engaged father of a teenage daughter. So I am extremely excited to share Jeff with you today. And Jeff, I want to thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. My pleasure. Delightful to be here with you.
So I would love to really dive in. First, I'd like you to share a little bit about your story. I think we've had a very similar life path, and it leads us to this place of really finding a path for us to have a truly fulfilling business and a meaningful life. And tell me a little bit about your story.
I hesitate for a second because whenever I think about the story, I think about I think it was Canadian Carl Sagan, the scientist, who once, when asked, how do you bake an apple pie from scratch, his response was, well, if you really want to bake an apple pie from scratch, you have to go back to the Big Bang, right? So whenever you ask about a story, it's a question of what's the start. Where do you start the story? How far back? Well, my mother and father met, So in my case, I'll say that you could say it started, in college, I had this sense of calling. I had a sense before then, but I had this, it's kind of one of these, a voice says, your mission, should you accept,
Yes,
is to leverage the power of business for the greater good. And in the process, your work will become your spiritual path. And, when I had this sense or this voice or whatever that I go, okay, reporting for duty. And now what do I do?
exactly.
So,
now what?
And I have to acknowledge that, I spent decades, following that,
Yes.
that sense of purpose, and this is why I'm here, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and, falling off cliffs, banging against walls, and then, getting up or climbing back up or, whatever, going around the walls, and then here I am, 30 some years later, and I look back and I go, okay, all those twists and turns and falls and bumps, they make sense now because here I am, as you recited, I guess, in the bio, my work is essentially 100% focused on leveraging the power of business for the greater good and making my work and supporting others to make their work essentially a spiritual path. So what I can say from my experience is looking, when you're in the journey and feel like you're lost, right, or off course, you don't really know until you're in the future and you look backwards.
So true. So true.
And one thing, I'll say to this is there's something very powerful about a sense of purpose and a definition of, okay, why am I here? What am I meant to do? And not that, there's any, cosmic or God, giving you that purpose or direction, but just having one, right?
Yes.
Articulating one and saying, okay, I'm going to take this one on as my purpose, whatever, whether it's a calling or, it is a very powerful driving directional force. When you get lost, it provides something to come back to, right? it focuses your energy and attention, and it draws resources to you. It draws your attention to resources, whether it's information or people or opportunities that support you to move in the direction towards manifesting or expressing that purpose. So I'll say after 30 some years of, pursuing a purpose, even getting off of it sometimes, but always coming back, that it really does help move you in a direction.
This is amazing. Listening to you talk, it sounds like you're describing my exact journey, and the exact journey of many others. And my experience has been that a lot of us go into business and we achieve a reasonable level of success, quote unquote success. And then you have this awareness that, wow, is this all there is? Is this what it was supposed to be? And my experience was very similar. I had this voice that just really came to me from the inside that said, Lisa, what are you doing? I mean, if you're sharing your talent and your gifts with the world, how are you doing that in a way that makes an impact? And my voice said, well, how can you why don't you use your skills and your talents to make a meaningful contribution to the health and well-being of people and the planet? And I realized on that day that I just made a decision. I said, this is true. This is really what I'm about. And there's no point in me doing anything otherwise. It's really about just staying in alignment. And you're absolutely right. As you go down this path, it's not easy because sometimes you can be swayed in a different direction, and it's really about coming back to center. But when you're on the path, so much magic happens. The people, the resources, the synchronicities are just incredible. So I thank you for sharing that, and I think that's really valuable for others to feel understood that that's kind of the path that we travel.
Yeah, and Joseph Campbell in his portrayal of the hero's journey talks about, when you accept the call, you essentially fall off a cliff.
Yes.
Into the underworld, and as you make the journey in the underworld, all manner of unexpected, people and resources show up to support you in the journey, and it really does seem to work that way.
It really does. That's so wonderful. Well, that's a great insight, and I'd love for us to talk a lot more about the conscious business space and your experience in working directly in the space now for so many years. Let's talk about conscious capitalism. How do you feel conscious capitalism is part of the solution when it comes to business?
Well, I tend to look at kind of foundations, right? And recognize that the foundation of what we create in the world is what we think, right?
Yes.
The Buddha, said, mind is the forerunner of all things.
Yes.
So the stories we tell create a certain reality. And the paradigms or the belief systems or the memes, right, that we share, this is the way we behave in the world. This is the way, businesses function. This is why businesses exist. We give one answer. We say, the purpose of business is business, right? The kind of prevailing paradigm, at least in the public market space, and that the purpose of a business is to generate return to shareholders, to investors. If we believe that, then there's a certain way that we're going to behave as business people, as investors and others.
Yes.
We're going to consider every decision from that lens. It's like, okay, how is this making money? And typically it tends to focus on the short term. How is it making money right now? So, if we can pay our people less, then our profits will be higher and our shareholders get more return. Okay, let's pay our people less. We can squeeze our suppliers, all right, more margin. Great, we're going to make more money. So our meme, our mindset, our framework is really important to how we act in the world.
Yes.
And back to the purpose thing. If you have a kind of the seed, an operating system that says my purpose is this, it's going to point you in a direction. So if you have a framework, a paradigm that says that business has a higher purpose than just making money. Every business does.
Yes.
It creates something of value for others, right? Or it wouldn't exist. Secondly, if you look at business as an ecosystem of interrelated, interdependent stakeholders, customers, employees, investors, suppliers, communities, the environment, etc., and you believe that by creating, and if you recognize that by creating value for all of those stakeholders and facilitating a harmony of interests, then you create a healthy ecosystem, a healthy business that will then bear fruit, right? So the profits come out of doing the other things rather than focusing on the profits. So if you do those two things, then you're going to have a healthier business. That's a different paradigm, right? It's a different way of thinking. Well, that's conscious capitalism. And there are two other principles. Those first two are purpose and a stakeholder orientation. So, and the other two principles are conscious leadership, recognizing to have a business that's focused on purpose and creating value for its stakeholders takes a certain kind of leaders. And those leaders are people that recognize that that is how you build a healthy, sustainable, long-term, value-creating business.
Yes.
And they focus on creating the fourth principle, which is a conscious culture, which is a culture that cultivates trust and develops the human beings in it, supports their ongoing learning, growth, and development, and recognize that when you give people meaning, purpose, care, that they bring their whole being to the endeavor, and they're more productive and they're more creative, etc., thus creating a healthier business. So conscious capitalism is essential to kind of changing the game because it's changing the operating system.
Yes.
And not just, on a superficial level, but on a very deep level, saying, here's a different way of thinking about doing business, orienting to business, and here's how you actually do it, right? So with stories of companies and examples of companies that are doing business this way, of practices and processes and systems that support building businesses that work this way. So from what I can tell after decades of being in this space and now, say, 7-8 years, specifically focused in conscious capitalism, it's essential to the transformation.
It is. And what I get excited about is the fact that the market is now supporting this. The consumers want to align themselves with businesses that are doing the right thing. And so it's a win-win, not just for the business to really be encompassing all of these things, but people are cheering for it. They want it. And there are countless examples of businesses that started with very little and became very resourceful, and they had these principles right from ground zero built up so quickly, and people are going, how did they build the business so fast? Well, it's because people are asking for these things. There's the Edelman Good Purpose Report, I believe, and that's really hard data that suggests that the world is moving to this so fast, and you have a better chance of succeeding as a business if you operate in this way.
Yeah, very, very well said. And if you think about it, right, at its core, what is a business, right? A business is a group of people coming together to do something, right? Now, why are they doing something? Well, they're doing something to create meaning and purpose and value for themselves and each other and others, the community, right? So it's a form of human social cooperation. As Ed Freeman, one of the kind of founding philosophers of conscious capitalism, observes, that capitalism in itself is the most successful form of human social cooperation ever conceived, right? And if you think about it, we have 7 billion people. Almost all of them are collaborating in some way in the global capitalist economy. And there's no one controlling the whole thing.
Yes.
And, right, my little phone here, how many millions of people, right, were part of this process? Including, the farmers that grew the food for the people who, mined the minerals that went into the metals in here, and the designers, and everybody involved in the process, like bees in a beehive, right? All doing their piece, and magically we have all of this stuff manifesting. So capitalism in itself is an incredible form of social cooperation, and value creation, right? And and because it's a human system, we ask, well, what is it that motivates and connects human beings? Well, fear and violence, on some level, to a limited extent, can hold people together.
Mm-hmm.
But the bonds of love, care, and trust are much stronger. And when people
Absolutely.
are bound together with trust, love, care, respect, they bring, and with a sense of meaning and purpose and feeling, support for their own growth and development and well-being, they bring their whole self to the endeavor. So you get energy, engagement, creativity, watching out for, threats and dangers and bringing it into the group. Say, hey, we got to pay attention to this. You just get so much more. So, and not only your employees, but people love, right? People, consumers, citizens love companies that clearly exude care, right? We care about you. We care about you. We care about you as a customer. We care about your community. We care about the air and water that supports all of us, right? And people can feel that. I remember Doug Rao, who's our CEO, former president of Trader Doug tells a story of how he would get comments from customers that would say, I love going into Trader Joe's. And one of the things I love the most is to see how supervisors treat the team members who are, a new team member is getting such care and in learning them, and they just the way that the supervisor is treating made them feel good to be in that store.
Yes.
Right? People like to be around people who care about people. Right?
I can attest to that completely. I'm very aware of that energy, and it's absolutely true. I love shopping at Trader Joe's because the staff are so happy, and they're going to make you happy even if you aren't. Before you walk in there, if you're not so happy, it's just incredible, and you can see that, you can feel the energy. And it's an incredible thing. And I also say, capitalism is a powerful force. And that's why this concept of building business as a force for good is so exciting for people like us, because we know this force is powerful and we know we can direct it in such a way that it benefits everyone. And other people are now starting to realize that this is possible. And it really is about collaboration and feeling that you understand what the model might be and feeling understood and how you'd like to design something that benefits everyone.
Yeah, and Doug and I were talking yesterday, and he recounted a story about Jim Senegal, who the recently retired CEO of Costco.
Yes.
Right? And for many years, financial analysts would just attack Jim Senegal and Costco, and specifically a couple reasons. One, because he took such a low salary, and two, because he paid his employees so much more, percentage-wise, than his competitors, like Sam's Club, for instance.
Yes.
And his response to them was, among other things, employee turnover, right? Hiring new employees is one of the biggest costs and liabilities to any retailer, right? And we pay our people more and treat them well and train them well, and they stay around for a long time. We have so much lower turnover and hiring costs than anyone else. This is just good business, right?
Yes.
And we do it for that reason, and we do it because it's just the right thing to do, right? And if you don't like it, right, you don't criticize me, just don't buy our stock.
That's right.
Needless to say, their stock dramatically outperforms the competition as well. And, the Container Store is another example. Again, retailers at this point, the Container Store and Whole Foods Market, that they treat their team members, their employees, so well. The Container Store, something like 240 hours of training in their first year, whereas average retail is under 8 hours of training for a whole year. And they pay substantially higher, and their turnover rate is under 9% or 8%, compared to 100% in general, or over 100%. So this works.
It absolutely works. Well, this is what I realized when I was young. I was a little entrepreneur. I was always creating and selling things, even when I was a kid. And what I realized was this concept of value exchange. And in my adult life as a business professional, I always wondered, why does the value exchange only happen for some companies between the product and service and the consumer or the customer? Why is that the only value exchange? Why is there not more value exchange between the employees and between, the larger community? How do we actually create a multi-dimensional value exchange? And I just never understood why that wasn't the case for a lot of companies.
But no, it actually is a value exchange. They just don't see it that way.
Yes.
Because you give your labor, you get, paid in advance, but it's a question of how you view it and how you treat it. And if you see it that way and recognize that, you're not just extracting something, or they're not taking something from you, but you're both, they don't understand that at the core, it's always a value exchange. And it's a question of, are you looking at it, or how do we do it in such a way that everyone comes up, or are you looking at it, how do I get more? And that's the difference.
And the common misconception around this, embracing a new way of doing business, is that, you think you might lose out or you're not going to make as much money. But the reality is, what are we all seeking? I mean, most of us are seeking a level of meaning and fulfillment in what we do. And operating this way, installing this new operating system, allows you to feel more fulfilled in your business and your life. I mean, that's my personal viewpoint. And it's very, very exciting. So I think, we're on the same page, Jeff. I really truly admire that you've been in this space for such a long time, and would love for you to continue sharing wisdom with us. We should really dive into some of the business models at some point. But why don't we talk a little bit about advice? We have a lot of listeners that are either wanting to start a social or an impact-driven enterprise, or they might already be in the process and they're trying to understand how to take the business to the next level. So what piece of advice would you offer to that impact-driven, socially conscious entrepreneur?
Well, a few things. The first one, and this is advice that I give to anyone who will listen, is you've got to begin by taking care of yourself, right? What so many entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs do is they're so passionately committed to, their vision or the purpose that they just trash themselves.
Yes.
In the process.
It's true. It's true.
They don't eat. They don't exercise.
They don't call their mother for 2 weeks. They don't
take care of relationships. Exactly. And while it's easy to justify that, and I've been there myself, right? And it feels like first of all, it's like a drug, right? You get adrenaline and all this other, kind of brain chemicals going on. And you feel like you're absolutely doing it. Part of it is you're so identified with that purpose or that vision or that thing. But it's not sustainable, and ultimately it doesn't engage others. Yes, the few fanatic maniacs that are there with you, but and there's some degree of attractiveness to, wow, look at the energy, look at the passion that these guys have. It's not sustainable, and ultimately it's not as connecting as if you take care of yourself, care for the others around you, and support them to do the same. Because then you're more open, expanded, you can connect with your other stakeholders, you see more, you don't make as many mistakes, you can be more creative in a certain respect because you have bigger vision. So there's something about, this intense, focus and banging that just can only last for so long. So one is take care of yourself, right?
Excellent advice.
The second one, which is somewhat related, is to cultivate conscious awareness, right? This ability to reflect, this ability to pause and ask, important questions, and again, to recognize what's going on inside of you, physically, mentally, emotionally, what's going on with others and in between you, right? If you're going to be catalyzing and leading and, cultivating a conscious culture, you as a leader are setting the tone. So how you care for yourself and how you orient is going to create the pattern for how everyone else does. And if you approach the enterprise and pretty much everything with awareness, well, then you're cultivating awareness, and awareness means like, all right, let's see how we're doing, right? What's going on outside? You're like this. What about what's going on in the marketplace? How are people responding, to us? So that conscious awareness which is that ability to see and feel what's going on.
Yes.
And then the third one I would say, which is kind of related, is to listen, right? Really listen. Listen to the people around you. Listen to feedback from your customers. If you, think you and know you're right? If you know you're right, you're ultimately in trouble, right? If you got other voices saying, hey, you might want to think about this or look at this or, this product, and you just discard it. No, that's one of the beautiful things about the marketplace is the marketplace votes, right?
It does.
With their choices, with their dollars. And if they go, I don't think so. Either you're not telling the story well enough or presenting what it is you got, or what you got doesn't really fill their needs or desires. So that listening to feedback internally yourself, internally your team, the marketplace is you think that, nobody's investors are stupid, they don't get it. Well, maybe investors see something that you don't, right?
Yes.
Listen to their feedback and respond. Now, they're not always right. I mean, Steve Jobs used to say, why should I do customer feedback, surveys and focus groups? That's what I was looking for. Why should I do focus groups? People have no idea whether they like something they've never seen before. So there is something to that if you're really breaking new ground.
Yes, I agree.
It may take them a while to recognize a need that they hadn't even recognized before, but that's a somewhat unique, that doesn't happen every day.
It's true. That is crucial advice. Thank you for bringing it up. The number of entrepreneurs I've spoken to that have been down the path for many years, and that is the piece of advice they share, which is you have to listen and really understand what your customers are telling you and make sure that your product is either solving a problem or serving a need for that person. It's just crucial. Absolutely crucial. And, again, just self-care, I agree 100%. I notice that when things are out of whack and you're working too much, you start to fall out of alignment. So you're actually working harder, you're pushing, and then you're not actually achieving the results you're looking for anyway. So it defeats the purpose. So self-care is it's absolutely essential. And again, if you have the belief that, our inner world is reflecting in our outer world, it becomes very important when you look at it that way.
Yeah, indeed.
So this has been fabulous. Jeff, thank you so much. You've shared so much wisdom. I would like people to engage with your work. Tell us, what is your website that, where people can find the most information about your books and, share where we can find more.
Yeah, so people can go to workingforgood.com and also consciouscapitalism.org.
Okay.
Where they'll find opportunities to connect with others through local chapters as well as through events, conscious capitalism events.
Excellent, excellent. Okay.
I look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely, we'll see you there in April. And I'd like to share with our listeners that if you have any questions for Jeff or myself, please do engage with us, connect, ask the question. We're here to serve you. We're here to support you. So if you have anything that you'd like to really reflect on and come back to us with after this call, please let us know. And again, Jeff, thank you so much for being part of the show today. And we look forward to working with you on some other projects.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
Likewise.
Have a great day.